My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this message carries a moment that has been building quietly behind the scenes, and what happened last night was far more emotional than anyone expected. Your person reached a point where the feelings they had been hiding could no longer remain buried, because someone finally pushed them to speak about you directly. What began as a tense conversation suddenly became a powerful confrontation that exposed emotions, memories, and truths your person had been trying desperately to keep under control. There was a moment during that conversation when your person became completely silent, not because they had nothing to say, but because the words being spoken about you touched something extremely personal inside their heart. The other person believed they understood the entire situation and felt confident that they could influence your person's decision, but they underestimated how deeply your connection had affected them. Your person had listened for a while, allowing the conversation to continue, until something was said that crossed an emotional boundary they could no longer ignore. That sentence changed the entire atmosphere of the room because it forced your person to confront something they had been avoiding for a long time. They realized that defending you was no longer something they could postpone, especially when someone else was attempting to rewrite the story between you and make your person believe that their feelings were meaningless. The anger that followed was not ordinary anger, because underneath it was pain, disappointment, regret, and a deep realization that they had allowed outside opinions to influence something that belonged to their own heart. The person standing against them expected your person to remain quiet, but instead your person finally spoke with a firmness that surprised everyone involved. They made it clear that nobody had the right to decide what you meant to them, and they refused to continue pretending that their emotions had disappeared simply because circumstances had become complicated. Something shifted inside your person at that exact moment, and even though the argument became intense, a hidden truth finally came to the surface. Type Amen 111 if this message resonates with your heart. Your person remembered moments with you that they had tried to push away, including small details that seemed insignificant at the time but had remained alive in their memory. They remembered your voice, your expressions, the way you reacted when you were hurt, and the moments when you gave them understanding without demanding anything in return. During the argument, those memories became impossible to ignore because every accusation against you seemed to awaken another reason why your person still cared. The other person noticed the change immediately and became even more determined to convince your person that walking away from you was the only sensible choice. They brought up old misunderstandings, old mistakes, and moments when the connection had felt uncertain, hoping those memories would become stronger than the love and attachment your person still carried. Instead, those reminders forced your person to recognize how much time they had spent running from emotions that had never truly disappeared. Your person finally admitted something they had not wanted anyone to know, and that admission completely changed the direction of the conversation. They acknowledged that even when they tried to move forward, some part of their heart continued returning to you, especially during quiet moments when there was nobody around to distract them. They admitted that seeing your name, remembering your presence, or hearing something connected to you could still affect them more deeply than they wanted to reveal. The other person became frustrated because they had expected your person to speak about you with indifference, but instead they heard emotion in every word. Your person was no longer defending an old memory or a temporary attachment, because they were defending the importance of someone who had left a lasting mark on their life. The argument became a turning point because your person finally stopped protecting everyone else's comfort at the expense of their own truth. Type Amen 333 if your heart feels connected to this message. There was another part of the conversation that your person had never expected to happen, because the other person revealed that they had been observing your connection from the outside for longer than your person realized. They mentioned details that made your person understand that people around them had noticed the emotional difference in them whenever your name came into the conversation. Your person suddenly realized that their attempts to hide their feelings had not been as successful as they believed. That realization created a strange mixture of embarrassment and relief, because pretending had become exhausting. Your person had spent so much time trying to appear unaffected that they had almost convinced themselves that they were unaffected. But when someone else challenged the meaning of your connection, their immediate emotional reaction exposed what their carefully controlled behavior had been hiding. The argument eventually moved beyond you and became a confrontation about your person's choices, their fear of vulnerability, and their habit of allowing circumstances to control their emotional decisions. The other person accused them of being stuck in the past, while your person realized that the past was not the real issue. The real issue was that they had never completely released what they felt for you, and pretending otherwise had created even more confusion. Your person then said something that may have surprised everyone in the room because it came directly from a place of honesty. They explained that whatever happened between you and them, they could not allow someone else to define your character or tell them how they were supposed to feel about you. That statement became the emotional center of the entire confrontation, because it revealed that your person was finally taking ownership of their own heart. Type Amen 777 if you believe everything hidden is coming into the light. After the argument reached its strongest point, there was a long silence that felt completely different from the tension that had existed before. Your person was no longer trying to win the argument, because something inside them had already changed. They were thinking about you, about the distance between you, about the things left unsaid, and about how many opportunities they may have allowed to pass because of fear. During that silence, your person remembered one particular moment between you that carried more emotional weight than they had realized. It may have been a simple conversation, a look, a message, a goodbye, or a moment when you showed them kindness while they were struggling internally. That memory returned with such clarity that your person realized they had been carrying it much longer than they had admitted. The other person noticed that your person had become distant and understood that the argument had not created separation from you. Instead, it had awakened something your person had been suppressing. The more they tried to convince your person to forget you, the more strongly your person remembered why they had never truly been able to do so. Your person eventually left that conversation emotionally exhausted, but they did not leave with the same mindset they had carried into it. They walked away realizing that continuing to hide their feelings was becoming more painful than acknowledging them. The argument had not solved everything, but it had broken through a wall that had been standing between your person and their own truth. Type Amen 888 if you feel this chapter is turning in your favor. Later that night, when everything became quiet, your person replayed the conversation repeatedly in their mind. They remembered every statement that had been made about you and every moment when they had defended you without even planning to do so. They began recognizing that their strongest emotional reactions were not random, because they were connected to feelings that had remained unresolved. Your person also realized that some of their previous decisions had been influenced by fear rather than genuine lack of interest. They had convinced themselves that distance would make everything easier, but distance had only given their feelings more room to grow quietly. They discovered that avoiding your name did not erase the memories attached to it, and staying busy did not prevent their heart from returning to you. Something even deeper happened when your person considered the possibility that you might have believed they no longer cared. That thought created a heavy feeling inside them because they suddenly understood how their silence could have been interpreted. They recognized that the absence of communication had created a story in your mind that might be completely different from the truth they had been carrying. Your person began thinking about what they would say if they ever had the opportunity to speak openly with you. They imagined explaining why they became distant, why they acted differently at certain moments, and why they sometimes seemed cold when they were actually overwhelmed. They knew an explanation could not erase the past, but they also knew that silence could no longer protect them from the emotions they had been avoiding. Type Amen 1212 if you are ready for a new chapter of clarity. There is another hidden layer to this situation that you may not have seen because much of it happened away from your eyes. Your person has been receiving opinions from people around them, and some of those opinions were based on incomplete information. Certain people saw only the surface of your connection and assumed that because there was distance, there must no longer be anything meaningful underneath it. But your person knew the surface was not the whole story. They remembered the emotional moments that nobody else witnessed, the conversations that only you and they understood, and the feelings that developed naturally before circumstances became complicated. Those memories made it impossible for your person to accept someone else's simplified version of what happened between you. The argument last night became powerful because the other person unknowingly touched the exact subject your person had been avoiding. They mentioned moving on, forgetting you, and choosing something that would appear easier from the outside. Your person's reaction revealed that the idea of completely removing you from their life was not as simple for them as everyone else wanted it to be. Your person became emotional because they realized that other people had been treating their heart like a decision that could be made by committee. They understood that advice could be useful, but nobody else could live with the emotional consequences of their choices. That realization gave them a stronger sense of independence and made them less willing to allow outside pressure to determine what happens next. Type Amen 444 if this message is speaking directly to your heart. Afterward, your person began looking at the situation differently. Instead of focusing only on what went wrong between you, they started remembering everything that had gone right. They remembered the comfort, the understanding, the laughter, the emotional safety, and the strange sense of familiarity that had made your connection feel different from ordinary relationships. They also thought about the moments when they may have hurt you without fully understanding the impact of their behavior. Your person recognized that some actions may have communicated the opposite of what they actually felt. They understood that someone can care deeply and still behave poorly when fear, confusion, pride, or pressure takes control. That realization brought regret, but it also brought responsibility. Your person began accepting that if they wanted anything to change, they could no longer blame circumstances for every decision they had made. They would eventually have to face the consequences of their silence and become honest about what they truly wanted. The most surprising part was that your person did not feel the same desire to hide anymore. The argument had exhausted their ability to pretend. Something inside them had become tired of running from a truth that kept returning no matter how many distractions they created. Type Amen 555 if you believe clarity is replacing confusion. There may be a period of quiet after this because your person is processing everything that happened. Silence does not automatically mean nothing is happening, and in this situation the silence may represent internal movement rather than emotional absence. Your person needs to understand their own feelings before they can communicate them clearly to anyone else. They are also becoming more aware of how their actions affect you. Before this confrontation, they may have focused mostly on protecting themselves from discomfort, but now they are thinking about the emotional cost their behavior may have created for you. That shift is important because genuine change begins when someone stops looking only at their own fear and starts recognizing the impact of their choices. Your person may replay specific moments when they could have reached out but chose not to. They may remember messages they typed and never sent, words they wanted to say but swallowed, and opportunities to explain themselves that disappeared because they waited too long. These memories are becoming lessons rather than excuses. The argument has therefore created something unexpected, because instead of pushing your person farther away from you, it forced them to look directly at the emotional truth they had been avoiding. They now understand that pretending not to care does not make feelings disappear. It only makes the eventual confrontation with those feelings more intense. Type Amen 666 if you are receiving this message with an open heart. There is a strong possibility that the next stage will not look dramatic from the outside. It may begin with a small sign of changed behavior, a different attitude, a softer tone, or an attempt to learn something about you indirectly. Your person may not immediately reveal everything they have realized, but their actions can begin showing that something inside them has shifted. They may also distance themselves from people who repeatedly speak negatively about you. Not because they suddenly believe everything is perfect, but because they no longer want outside voices controlling their emotional decisions. Your person is beginning to understand that protecting their peace sometimes means creating boundaries around conversations that keep them confused. The person they argued with may continue trying to influence them, but the power of that influence has weakened. Your person has already heard the strongest arguments against following their heart, and instead of becoming convinced, they became more aware of what they actually feel. That is why last night's conflict matters so much in the emotional story unfolding around you. Your person is also beginning to separate reality from assumptions. They are realizing that some things they believed about you may have been based on incomplete information, misunderstandings, or the opinions of others. This realization could eventually make them more open to seeing you through their own experience rather than through someone else's interpretation. Type Amen 999 if you are ready to release the old confusion. One of the deepest emotions your person carried after the argument was regret over allowing someone else to speak so confidently about your connection. They realized that they had not always defended what mattered to them because they were afraid of appearing emotionally attached. That fear made them look detached when their heart was actually far more involved. They remembered moments when you may have been waiting for reassurance while they were busy hiding their own uncertainty. They recognized that their silence could have made you feel unimportant even when you were occupying a significant place in their thoughts. This understanding is painful because your person now sees the distance between what they felt and what they communicated. Your person may also be experiencing a renewed desire to know how you are doing. They may wonder about your life, your emotions, your current priorities, and whether you still carry any feelings toward them. Rather than rushing into assumptions, they are beginning to understand that the only way to know the truth is through honest communication. This is why the coming period may feel strangely quiet but emotionally intense. Behind that quietness, your person is organizing thoughts that have been scattered for a long time. They are deciding what deserves to remain in the past and what deserves another honest look. Type Amen 222 if your heart is ready for truth without fear. The argument also exposed something about the other person that your person had not fully recognized before. Your person began noticing how frequently that individual tried to influence their choices whenever your name appeared in the conversation. What once seemed like casual advice suddenly looked different after last night's confrontation. Your person started remembering previous conversations and recognizing patterns they had ignored. They realized that certain statements had gradually shaped their fears and caused them to question their own instincts. This realization may create distance between your person and that individual because trust becomes difficult when someone feels their emotions have been repeatedly manipulated. Your person is not necessarily going to announce every realization immediately. They may quietly observe behavior, listen more carefully, and make decisions privately. This internal process is important because they are learning to trust their own judgment again. The most meaningful change is that your person is no longer treating your connection as something that can simply be erased because someone else finds it inconvenient. They may still have fears, unresolved issues, and practical concerns, but emotionally they can no longer pretend that you mean nothing to them. Type Amen 1010 if you feel a hidden truth is becoming visible. There was likely a moment after the argument when your person looked at their phone and thought about contacting you. Even if they did not send anything, the thought itself revealed how naturally their mind turns toward you during emotionally intense moments. You remain connected to a part of their emotional world that they have not been able to replace with distractions. They may have opened an old conversation, looked through memories, or simply sat quietly thinking about what they would say. These small actions may seem insignificant, but they reveal the internal struggle between wanting connection and fearing vulnerability. Your person is caught between the comfort of familiarity and the fear of what honesty could change. At the same time, your person knows that returning to you without addressing the past would not be enough. They understand that old misunderstandings cannot simply be ignored. If they approach you again, they may feel the need to explain themselves more honestly than they have ever done before. That is why this story is not only about romance or reunion. It is about accountability, emotional maturity, and the courage to stop hiding behind circumstances. Your person is beginning to understand that genuine connection requires honesty, consistency, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Type Amen 1313 if you are ready for a more honest chapter. Your person may have also realized that the argument revealed how much they had changed since the beginning of your connection. At first, they may have believed they could simply walk away whenever things became difficult. Now they understand that leaving physically does not always mean leaving emotionally. They have carried your memory through different situations, different conversations, and different attempts to focus elsewhere. They may have met other people, received advice, or tried to convince themselves that something else would be easier. Yet your memory continued appearing in unexpected moments. That persistence has made them question their own previous decisions. They are beginning to understand that what they felt with you was not based only on excitement or temporary attraction. Something about the emotional connection affected them at a deeper level, and they have been trying to understand that depth ever since. The confrontation forced them to admit this internally even if they are not yet ready to say it publicly. Sometimes a person reaches clarity privately before they develop the courage to communicate it outwardly. Your person's internal clarity is growing, and that is why their next decisions may look different from their previous behavior. Type Amen 1414 if this message brings peace to your heart. Your person is also beginning to understand that you may have experienced the entire situation differently. They know you may have seen their distance, their silence, or their confusing behavior without knowing the internal struggle behind it. That awareness creates a strong desire within them to correct the misunderstanding eventually. They may wish they could go back and explain every moment, but they know time cannot be reversed. Instead, they are considering how to approach the future differently. The lesson they are learning is that feelings hidden too long can create unnecessary pain for everyone involved. There is also a growing awareness that other people's opinions should not become the foundation of their personal decisions. Your person is learning to listen, but not automatically obey. They want to understand what they feel without allowing fear or social pressure to dictate every move. This internal independence could be one of the biggest outcomes of last night's confrontation. The argument was painful, but it forced your person to reclaim ownership of their emotional life. They now know that choosing peace does not mean choosing whatever makes everyone else comfortable. Type Amen 1515 if you are ready for emotional freedom and clarity. The person who argued with your person may have believed they were protecting them. However, your person's emotional response revealed that being protected from one difficult connection is not the same as being protected from emotional regret. Your person now understands that avoiding something meaningful simply because it is complicated can create a different kind of pain. They are also thinking about whether you still have space for them in your life. That thought may create hesitation because they know they cannot assume that you will simply accept them back after everything that happened. They understand that trust may need to be rebuilt through actions rather than promises. This realization is actually a sign of emotional growth. Instead of expecting you to remain exactly where they left you, they are beginning to understand that you have your own journey, your own boundaries, and your own emotional needs. They know that if they ever return, they must approach you with respect rather than entitlement. Your person is therefore becoming more serious about what they want. The emotional confusion is still present, but beneath it there is a growing certainty that pretending you never mattered is no longer possible. Type Amen 1616 if you believe what is genuine cannot be erased by confusion. Something else changed after the argument because your person began seeing the other individual's behavior through a different